Hello all. Now we will discuss about the proteins, their classification and their functions. Proteins are the high molecular weight mixed polymers of amino acids which are joined together with peptide linkage. Proteins are the chief constituents of all living matter. They contain carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and sulfur, and some also contain phosphorus. The functions of protein: they act like a catalyst because they are present like an enzymes for metabolic pathways, and these enzymes are also made up of proteins. Second function of protein is they help in the storage and transport mechanism. For example, in myoglobin and hemoglobin which support in the transport of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood. Third function is they have got structural load. The reticulum which bind or hold the cells as tissues or organs are made up of proteins. Fourth is they have got mechanical work. The movement of flagella and cilia, microtubule. These flagella, cilia, microtubule, they all are made up of proteins. Fifth function is they perform hereditary transmission by nucleoproteins of the nucleus. Sixth function is hormones and hormone receptors are also made up of proteins. Seventh function is the specialized functions. They have got very specialized functions like antibodies. They are also made up of proteins and they provide defense to the body. Eighth function is they are involved in blood clotting through thrombin, fibrinogen, and other protein factors. These thrombin, fibrinogen, and other clotting factors are also made up of proteins. This is about the function of protein, and now we will discuss about the classification of protein. Proteins can be classified in two different ways. The first method of classification, here proteins can be classified as globular protein or fibrous protein. Globular proteins, they are spherical in shape, they are water soluble molecules, and they have mostly functional roles in the cell. For example, enzymes are globular proteins. Then the second one is fibrous proteins. These fibrous proteins, they are having thread-like structures or cables with repeating units. They are insoluble molecules, they are not soluble in water, and they provide mechanical or structural support. The example is keratin and collagen. The second type of classification, here the proteins can also be classified as simple protein, conjugated protein, and derived protein. The examples of simple protein, there are different types of simple proteins are there. For example, albumin is a simple protein. The characteristic of albumin is it is soluble in water, coagulable by heat, and precipitate at high salt concentration. The example of albumin are like serum albumin, egg albumin, lactalbumin. Then the second simple protein is globulin, which is insoluble in water, soluble in dilute salt solutions, and precipitate by saturated salt solutions. The example for globulin is serum globulin, vitelin, and tuberin. Then glutatins, they are insoluble in water but soluble in dilute acids and alkalis. The example is glutenin and origenin, which are present in wheat and rice respectively. Prolamines, they are insoluble in water and absolute alcohol. The example is geladin, which is present in wheat, and zine, which is present in maize. Protamines, they are low molecular weight proteins soluble in water, dilute acid, and alkalis. The example is salmine. Histones, they are soluble in water and insoluble in very dilute ammonium hydroxide. The example is globin of hemoglobin is a histone. Scleroproteins, they are insoluble in water, dilute acids, and alkalis. The example is keratin and collagen. The next thing is about the conjugated proteins. These conjugated proteins, here the protein molecule is attached with another molecule here. The example is a nucleoprotein. These are composed of simple basic proteins with nucleic acids found in nuclei, and they are soluble in water. The example is nucleoprotamines and nucleohistones. The next thing is lipoprotein. There is a combination of protein with lipids such as fatty acids, cholesterol, etc. The example is lipoproteins of egg yolk, milk, and cell membrane. The next is glycoprotein. This is the combination of protein with carbohydrate. Here the example is mucin, which is present in saliva, oomucoid and oseomucoid, tendomucoid. These are the examples of glycoprotein. Then phosphoprotein, they contain phosphorus radical as a prosthetic group. The example is casinogens and oovitylene. Metalloproteins, they contain metal ions as their prosthetic group. The metal ions generally are like iron, cobalt, magnesium, manganese, zinc, copper, etc. The example is siderophylline and ceruloplasmin. Chromoprotein, they contain porphyrin as their prosthetic group. The example is hemoglobin and myoglobin. Flavoprotein, they contain riboflavin as their prosthetic group. The example is flavoproteins of liver and kidney. The next thing is about the derived proteins. These are the proteins which are derived during hydrolysis or during any processes. So the examples of derived proteins are like proteins. They are derived in the early stage of protein hydrolysis by dilute acids or alkalis. The example is fibrin from fibrinogen. Metaproteins, these are derived in later stages of protein hydrolysis by strong acids and alkalis. The example is acid and alkali metaproteins. Coagulated proteins, they are denatured proteins which are formed by the action of heat, X-rays, ultraviolet rays. The example is cooked proteins, coagulated albumin. Proteoses, these are formed by the action of pepsin or trypsin. The example is albumose from albumin, globulose from globulin. Then peptides, these are the compounds containing two or more amino acids. They may be di, tri, and polypeptide. The example is glycylalanine, leucyl glutamic acid. So these are some of the examples of derived proteins. So here we have studied about the definition of protein, functions of protein, and classification of protein. Thank you.